Welcome back to another edition of the Friday Golf Podcast. I am your host, Andy Johnson. Today, I am super excited to have a couple talks. One former PGA Tour player and one PGA Tour player, both regular guests. I'm joined by Roberto Castro, who now works at CapTech, who's a consulting part of TGL. Roberto was very instrumental in the launch of TGL. Kind of most notably the formatting and testing of the formatting of the new indoor golf league that I think had a pretty good Monday. It was a really good President's Day. I think it was probably their most successful broadcast of the year. They had three of them, three really good matches. I think it was captivating and is starting to win over some people on the fence. So Roberto joins me. He also has a podcast that is notable, worth listening to. It's the Course Record Show. Dives into the business of golf. I always like to plug that when Roberto's on the podcast. And then I'm joined by PGA Tour member Zac Blair, also the Tree Farm founder. And we talk about three golf courses that kind of he thinks about the most. As you can imagine, Tree Farm is one of those. We'll kind of keep the other two behind the curtain. So we talk with Zac on the back half of this podcast. So little golf course architecture with Zac and a little TGL with Roberto Castro. Before we get to that, we just dropped our Rainerman collection in the Pro Shop. So if you go to proshop.thefriedegg.com, we collaborated with Swag Golf to make some head covers, putter covers, and T-shirts with our favorite Rainerman logo. So check that out. If you're a Club TFE member, you obviously get 10% off with your membership. Use that code. It's been emailed to you multiple times. All right, let's get to Roberto about and talk about the TGL and their big Monday night and how the league's gone in his eyes so far. All right, Roberto, we were supposed to record this last week and fortuitously push this to the current week. And now I'm excited to chat about this. So we're recording the Tuesday after the President's Day extravaganza of TGL, where I don't know if it had a moment. It felt like it kind of had a moment where a lot of things clicked. What do you think went so well about Monday for the TGL?
You had three really close matches. I mean, that's really what went well. And I think you saw the guys, like, the idea was always like a great blend of competitiveness and entertainment. And that came through yesterday because when you had these blowout matches, like, actually credit to the players, like, they tried to salvage it into like a watchable TV show and a good entertainment product. And that's the most you can get out of a 12-1 or a 9-0 match. But yesterday you saw what it looks like when I kept telling people, like, look, when the last 3, 4, 5 holes, like when it's close, you're going to see a different energy. And we saw that yesterday.
To me, it also feels like maybe they're starting to learn how to play in there a little bit. Like, I think like something that, I don't think like anybody like talked about, and I've talked about probably TGL more than anybody on the Shotgun Start, but something we just didn't talk about was like maybe these guys don't know how to play screen golf and they have to learn how to play screen golf. To me, like, it seems like they're starting to learn how to chip around the adjustment period of like they know where to aim. JT yesterday was like, I'm not going to try and cut this. I'm just going to let it draw.
Yeah.
It feels like they're starting to also learn how to play in the SoFi Dome.
Yeah, there's definitely an adjustment period. Some players had spent more time in here than others, but really it's like under the gun is what matters. And just like it takes a player a couple practice rounds or a couple years to get comfortable at a Bay Hill or a Riviera, like it's similar. Like you have to learn, like, what's the feel of the turf? Like, how far does the ball go? All those things. But you're totally right. Like, my brother was texting me yesterday and he was like, dude, they are hitting one laser after another. Like, the number of shots that went right at the hole yesterday were probably 2x to what you saw week 1 and week 2. So that's definitely happening.
It felt like they were reading the green better too.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
like the other thing. Like I don't know. I had here like, what's like one thing that you weren't at all worried about with this, and that you realize was like a problem, or there was a learning curve associated with said thing?
Yeah, probably the shorter shots, like the 50 to 120, because it's not like a months long learning curve, but I think all of us that were really involved in the testing had kind of gotten well past that hump of like, I'm really good at a 70-yard shot in the SoFi Center, but I don't remember what those first few were. And this is like the biggest, most sophisticated sim in the world, but it's still a sim. You can't overcome the like law of simulator golf that says the closer you get to the hole, the more awkward and the more adjustment it takes, right? Like 175-yard shot is just like a full 8-iron for these guys. It takes 5 minutes. But 80, 90 yards, like whether you're sim in your basement, or whether you're playing here, it just takes time to figure out an 80-yard shot. And you definitely saw that.
I feel like that is relatable for anybody that's played simulator golf. Like, it's super weird when you're at a simulator trying to hit a 50-yard shot, because I think like one of the things that you like, I feel like inside 100, so much of like the way you process the shot is your eyes looking at the target.
Totally. And I think actually the 65-foot screen here may have made it harder than the sim in your basement or the sim at a 5-iron or an in-town golf club, because talk about depth being weird. Like, get up to an IMAX screen and try to hit a 50-yard shot into it. It's very strange.
Yeah. What if, you obviously were instrumental in the testing, the formatting of this league. What have you enjoyed the most about the TGL kind of coming online, coming to the world?
It's a great question. I really think the two things are the player buy-in. Like, the biggest thing TGL had going for it on night one is you've got 20 of the top 30 players in the world, give or take, right? Like, the talent you're starting with is a huge, huge asset. And they're not locked in forever, right? Like, they need to be really invested in it and having fun with it. Like, it needs to add to their experience. These guys are making tens of millions of dollars. They can pretty much set their schedule. Like, they've got a good thing going. It needs to be additive to their careers. And like, these comments are genuine. Like Shane Lowry saying like he's having as much fun as he can remember playing golf. Like, I overheard an agent say that the chatter at Torrey Pines last week in the locker room is like, all the players are like, man, it's a blast. Like, these matches are a ton of fun. So that's been really cool to see. And then two, just the audience reception. Like, I think like Mike McCarley, who founded this thing with Tiger and Rory, like he said, like some old, I don't have like an entertainment background, but there's like an old Hollywood saying that in TV and entertainment, it's like a parachute. It either opens or you die. And that night one, the general reaction of the fans and the viewers was like, all right, this is cool. I'm in. And to me, that is the biggest, like, most exciting thing, right? It's not about the numbers. It's a year one product. It's just about having customers that like give a damn about your product and are invested in it. Whether you love or hate the hammer, or whether you think like just having an opinion is a really big win. So it's been fun to get text every week from people that are engaged in it.
I completely echo the player buy-in. And I think like that's like, even I think like, and you don't have to comment on this obviously, but like for me, like players that I would have been worried about being bought in, like someone like Patrick Cantlay, I was not sure if he was going to be bought in. But like you saw yesterday, like he was legit.
Yeah.
Like, I think at the core of it, it's like a hyper competitive game, because these guys, like, none of these guys like losing at all.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I feel like when you play, I've gone on trips with like guys that all play competitive golf. And when you play anything with hyper competitive athletes or people, everybody's engaged and doesn't want to lose. And at the core of this, none of these guys want to lose.
Yeah, that, and you're totally right. Like, it's kind of sidebar, but the few times I'm lucky to play like a really fancy, like top 10, top 100 club, like these places are so sophisticated and whatnot. It's always like you set up a game, maybe for $5, it may be for anything. And I'm trying to like get into the match, even if everyone's getting their shots and everyone's just out there for a good experience. And I'm always like, are we 2 up? Are we 2? Like, what's the score? And nobody cares, right? And this is the opposite of that. Like these guys really care. And then the team aspect, I played college golf. It's not team golf. You just go play golf and then you add up your scores at the end. And the reason that this is working is, the triples format, the alternate shot works. They're reading putts together and hitting shots together because of the shot clock. Like it's legit team golf. Every shot putt that goes in, like it's high fives all around because they're all within 10 feet of each other. I gave 0 high fives in 4 years of college golf. Like it doesn't happen. So that's really fun for them. And you hear them say it like, I love my job, but it's a grind. You've heard them say that over and over again. The PGA Tour, 72-hole stroke play, like the courses are hard, the pressure is high. This is fun. Let a teammate hit a shot. Let me pitch in where I can. Like, give me someone to stand with here, as opposed to just every week, it's knives out, each man for himself.
Yeah, I think like I say this at all of our events, is that because like we play alternate shot at all of our events.
The fried egg events.
Yeah. And I think people are like, a lot of times it's like the one time in a year, the one time in 5 years somebody's played, or sometimes the first time somebody's ever played alternate shot.
Yeah.
And they are nervous. And I often say to them, this is team golf.
Right.
This is where you are working with someone. And like, if you're playing best ball partner, best ball, like a 4-ball.
Yeah.
It's just like I've had partners in 4-ball tournaments where we play matches against each other because that's the best way we've found to play well together. It's like we literally are playing against each other in a match trying to beat the other one.
Yeah.
And like in alternate shot, it completely switches where like it is like, wait, like where do you, like you have to think about like, where do you want, and you heard it yesterday, like right before, I can't remember if it was Keegan or Hideki was about to hit a 3-wood into a par 5. You heard Rory be like, left side is better, left side is better, left side is like, like that wouldn't happen if they're playing best ball, in my opinion. Like because like he's worried about the next guy who's going to have to hit the shot, right? Like, and I think that's like the fascinating thing with alternate shot. And if I'm going to be completely honest, I don't know if singles is the best ender. Like to me, like if you had gone triples alternate shot the way it is, where it's 3-person the whole way, would it have been more compelling? Maybe. I don't know. Like we've never done that. Part of me thinks that's the most compelling format of the game because it is that team aspect. But at the same time, like yesterday, it was also cool seeing Rory McIlroy and Ludwig Aubert, who's, just the last 2 big time tournament winners, square off down the stretch of a match with consequential golf. They both make birdies. That was cool too. You know?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And we messed with a bunch of that in the testing. I remember the first one we ever did, it was like, hey, maybe we do some best ball holes, some alternate shot holes. Maybe it's like runs of singles. And then we would realize that like a player was sitting down for 35 minutes. It's like, well, we can't have that happen. Right. So it's like, until you try these things, you don't know. But the triples has been, it moves fast. Like those first 9 holes have been really, really good. I think they've done a better job too of getting the energy kind of between triples and singles because there's a bit of that break there. And a couple of the early matches, I felt like in venue too, like it just went a little flat and then the singles came back. Like, so I think they've maintained it a lot better. And, it's just like one of many examples of learning and changing as they go.
Let's talk about that a little bit. I think like where everybody wanted to land on like a very formed opinion, and this has got to be one of the most challenging aspects of the league, is like most, I guess you could call this a startup. It's an extraordinarily well-funded startup. Yeah. Most startups get to operate a little bit in obscurity for a while before like they figure out, like they operate in obscurity, figure out product market fit. And then there's like this growing popularity, and then they get the microscope put on them once they are very popular.
Yeah.
you unveiled on ESPN primetime, the Tuesday night. What have yet it's still entrepreneurial. Like, what have you enjoyed most about like you played golf for a living. You have a degree from Georgia Tech, though, you seem to be very interested in like the business side of the world. You have a golf podcast about the business side of golf. Like, what's been your favorite aspect of the entrepreneurial journey of this thing?
It's really been getting other people's perspectives. I mean, you nailed it. I'm a little too close to it. My colleagues at CapTech are probably a little too close to it. And starting week 2, we started bringing clients down, right? So they were either founders of companies or they're executives at Fortune 500 companies. And they kept saying like, hold, time out. Like, this is version 1 of a product. Y'all keep showing what could be better and what the feedback's been. But do you realize how polished this is, how put together, how sophisticated this product in the market is right now for a version 1, and just getting their perspective, like you said, outside business perspective of what the first, a new hotel brand or a new, apparel line, like they've all put products out into the world, right? And getting their take on it has been really rewarding and really interesting, because like bringing a different business mind to it, right? If you ran a public facing consumer brand, you think about it one way. If you run like a franchise business, you think about it a different way. And I mean, that's the cool thing about my job now is like I get to meet all these people in different parts of businesses and talk through this stuff, and getting them to TGL and their thoughts on it has been awesome.
How do you think season 2, you just brought up product version 1. How do you think season 2 will differ from season 1 in any way?
Yeah, I think you're going to have some different holes, I would think. Could have a little bit of shifting of the players. One thing I think is going to be really cool.
What's free agency? What's hot stove season look like?
It's going to happen eventually. I think a lot of the stuff you see in other sports will happen eventually. Like, let's get to steady state in season 1.
My frogs need to make some moves.
Frogs and I need to make some moves. And the Doncic thing proved any trade is on the table, right? There are no sacred cows. So if you can trade
they might trade Rory in the middle of the night.
Yeah. But think about season 2. One thing I think is cool is like a season narrative, and this could take 5 years. It could take season 2. I think it's going to start developing season 1, but it's like, what's the cadence of the season and the narrative? So like, I'm from Atlanta. I probably follow the Atlanta team closest. Yesterday, if they win in the afternoon, they clinch a playoff spot. 4 teams make the playoffs, 2 don't. So they lose a close match. Now next week they play Boston. So if you're thinking about it, you're like, okay, Atlanta needs to win this, or they lose 2 in a row when they just were sitting pretty like a second ago. Or does Boston go 0-4? Like, they're literally like got to do something, right? So I think you start to build these narratives in season 2 where people understand like, okay, like part of week 2 NFL excitement is like, if a good team like loses week 1, it's like, it's do or die, right? Like if the Steelers lose the first 2 weeks, it's like, okay, they're not, that week 3 becomes like the biggest game of the year. And again, it'll take time, but some of that stuff I think will start to develop as the league finds its rhythm.
That's my frogs. I felt like that last game, and then the Bay ripped our hearts out of that.
Yeah.
We're 0-3. I don't know what we're gonna do. I still think we got a chance to get it. We got to win the last 2 though.
Yeah, no, he's still in it. 4 out of 6 making playoffs gives everyone a chance.
I know that after like week 1, there was talks of like they're already talking expansion. Is that a feasible thing for season 2? Is that a realistic chance?
I think so. I think that has been reported and it tracks. I know there's been NBA owners, NFL owners. I think there was like 3 NFL owners at week 1. So I mean, it's sports. Assets are so highly valued and coveted right now that I think you're looking at a lot of different owners trying to expand their portfolios, and this is a great way to do it.
Do you think there'd be expansion beyond just the teams, expansion of like where they might play? To me, it does seem a little silly to be just flying people back and forth from the coast in this early season run when you're playing the PGA Tour is playing on the West Coast and then you're playing Monday and Tuesday nights on the East Coast.
Yeah, agreed. And the other one of the biggest wins so far has been the venue. Like people, I mean, like Pat McAfee week one, I think was like, this place is sick. I got to get in there with the boys. Like, can you just imagine how, and that keeps coming up. Like everyone is like, how do I get in here? We need more of these. Like, what's the next one? And I can tell you, like, ground up construction doesn't take months. Like, it takes years. Like SoFi Center took, years, multiple, to come to life. So I do think it's on the radar. I think West Coast definitely makes sense, but I would not be looking for another building in season 2. But I think it totally makes sense. And I mean, professional golf will likely be played on the West Coast in the early part of the year forever. Would be I rarely use that word, but it's a safe bet considering, it's great weather and all the reasons it's worked for the last 60, 70 years. So it makes a lot of sense.
Would the tech ever allow for an outdoor stadium? That's something that I thought about with the West Coast.
So, I mean, one of the tests we did, like, I think it was the second or third test, we actually went to Interlochen Country Club in Orlando, and we would set up launch monitors that were tied to a simulator game, full swings, and then the ball would fly into a net. Like, we had a net set up on the driving range. And then we would go chip and putt on a chipping green because we were just testing, and there was not a test center or this, SoFi Center at all. So I think so. I mean, look at the technology. Like anything, the first Top Golf was the hardest one to build, right? And then you learn and things get easier. So is there one you can spin up in, the stadium in Vegas or at SoFi Stadium in LA and then spin it back down? Like, I certainly think it's possible over the long term as the technology improves.
Yeah, that's something I think you just immediately start to think about, like, how this thing could evolve. But like I think one of the smartest things that is done is the time frame and when it's on. The time of year it's on is just like, it's this really good opportunity. Yeah. Like, most people are at home, it's dark out. Like, one thought I had was, okay, the West Coast, it doesn't rain in the summer. Like, I don't think you could do it now on the West Coast because you might get a freak rain out, right? But you could conceivably do it on the West Coast at 5 p.m. on a Monday or Tuesday night in August, and you're competing against nothing, and the vast majority of the country, it's going to be dark at that time, and you're all of a sudden creating this a similar aspect, but it's outdoors, like, and that could be a cool twist in the summer,
Yeah, no, it's a good point. The indoor part really matters, though. I tell you, like, this is Florida. Like, I was just outside and it was pouring rain. It's not going to affect the competition at all. I mean, I think the saddest, I don't know if it's the right word, but professional golf, it was always, I wasn't worried about myself when we would have these brutal rain weeks. Like, people spend a year getting ready for these things, right? Mm-hmm. People pour their heart and soul and money into whether it's the US Open or a college event, and then it just rains for 3 days. And it's just, I feel bad for everyone involved. This is indoor is a big asset. I mean, it really is. Indoor prime time is tough to overcome. So I would vote indoor for now, but I think it's possible to do creative things as the technology improves.
With obviously before Monday, there was a huge rule change. This shook the sports world, the greater sports world. Everybody was talking about the rules, the hammer rule change. I think it was a good rule change, to where, like, people, they feel like they have to use it. I think it's like a fascinating strategy piece now. Like, it's pretty clear that they don't know how to use it. Like, when to. They seem to be like waiting to use the hammer, which doubles the point total of it if it's accepted. If it's not accepted, it's automatically the hole is over. Yep. It seems like a lot of people are using it when the holes are already effectively over. But what went into the rule change?
Yeah, I think, credit to TGL. They've had an open mind about everything, right? I mean, you're always balancing. Somebody, spends a lot of time and energy to put something out into the world, and then feedback comes back. Like, you have to be kind of an adult to say, okay, maybe what I made wasn't perfect. Let's listen to the customer, let's listen to the fan, and let's consider a change. And I mean, they were really thoughtful about it. And that's something, like, I get to be involved in the conversations, which is fun. But I think it doesn't just go there. Like, they added a pin camera this week they changed the walkout, cadence, like to make it quicker, get to the first shot faster. Like they're making changes to improve the product constantly. But yeah, I mean, the hammer, 3 per team, like I can explain it to someone in 5 seconds. They understand like a set number per team. It's like timeouts in other sports. And then one thing that happened a lot was like in venue, fans would be like, throw the hammer. And they didn't have it. The other team had it. So, you just created for some kind of awkward situations. The Tiger Rory match, there were like 7 thrown under the old format, and that match came down to we tested this thing so much and it really could work, but I think it's a really positive change. I think it's working better now.
What was your favorite format that you tested that you didn't use?
I'm trying to think back to that first one. We just had goofy stuff. Like I just remember like one player sitting there for like 35 minutes, not hitting a shot. And it was like, because we didn't know if it was going to be 4 players or 3 players or, again, all of this was like from scratch, net new. So it was like a bunch of ex-college players and me and some buddies that did the first one ever at like a simulator bar. And it's definitely come a long way since then.
I've been with another buddy trying to create a golf game.
Yeah.
And it's so fun to test it. And we did a test, a couple months ago of it. And the people that we like forced it on people. Yeah. And like there were some people that are like, F this game.
Yeah.
It's so fun trying something new. And like you quickly realize like what works, what doesn't work when you're playing it in person.
Yeah, totally. And some of this stuff like really takes off. I mean, the birdie bet at my club at Ansley, you need a birdie every hole during the calendar year, right? Like that thing is spread
like 4 people that could conceivably do that.
Those guys play a lot of golf. But like that's really taken off.
It's so hard to birdie every hole at a course in a calendar year.
I know. But if you play, if you're a real estate guy who plays 200 rounds a year, it definitely helps a lot. But yeah, I mean, people have fun with different things. I think it's good.
Yeah. I grew up playing at one member had eagled every hole. He played there for like ever. It was insane.
That's like the old, was it Snead or who was it that like made a hole in one with like 13 clubs of their bag? It was like either Sarazen or Snead or whatever. He had like 42 hole in ones with 13 clubs in the bag.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, Roberto, thank you for joining us to chat TGL. You'll be locked in again tonight. The people will be, reacting from the Jupe Links New York Golf Club. I feel bad for producer PJ. His New York Golf Club's in a bad spot right now. They're maybe the ones that need to make the most off-season moves.
They may need to make some moves. If you can get Juan Soto, though, you can probably get you can probably line up some sort of tour star to sneak in the back door.
A sneaky thing is like to think about what happens TGL if Liv and the tour are back together by the end of the year. What TGL season 2 looks like, what players could be added in.
Yeah, interesting thought. I think like it goes back to team golf. Like these guys are starting to like feel like they're part of a team. There's an ownership group. There's I'm not sure that and with a small crew, like team dynamics matter, right? I could see the current team players wanting to handpick next season's roster if there was additions to it.
I'm just waiting for a GM position to open up. I want to move into a GM role.
Management role.
Yeah, I want to be. These players can't manage themselves.
There's plenty of agents out there. I don't think you're the first person to think about that.
All right. Well, all right. Roberto, thanks for joining, and
thanks,
everybody should check out your podcast. And we look forward to watching more TGL.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. You got New York and Jupiter tonight, and then we do have a podcast episode coming up soon with Chad Mumm, who has his pro shop business in the new season of full swing. So awesome. Interesting business angle on what he's trying to do over there. Smart guy. Looking forward to chatting with Mumm here pretty soon.
All right. Big thanks to Roberto. As a reminder, check out that Course Record podcast, his podcast about the business side of golf, if you're interested in hearing more. Before we get to Zach, let's talk about our partner, Good Walk Coffee. I have had a lot of house guests this month. Lots of people in and out of my world, in my house. And one of the highlights of hosting is everybody always ask me about the coffee that I'm serving because they are overwhelmed at how good it is. I serve the fried egg blend of Good Walk Coffee in our house, and I'm astounded at how many people comment about the coffee. So we have two different blends with our friends at Good Walk Coffee. We have the fried egg blend, which is a medium light roast, and we have the shotgun start blend, which is a medium dark roast. This coffee we make in partnership with Good Walk, and I get mine delivered monthly. I get 2 bags a month. When I'm hosting people, it's kind of a bummer. I'm out of coffee right now. I could go on to goodwalkcoffee.com and order more, but the subscription's so nice because I get just shipped it and I almost never run out unless we're hosting people. So if you want to get your Good Walk Coffee, go to goodwalkcoffee.com/fried egg and use the promo code fried egg to save 20% on your entire order. If you sign up for one of those subscriptions, which I really recommend, you'll save 30% on your first order and 10% on all future shipments. That's goodwalkcoffee.com/fried egg. Thanks. All right, Zac Blair, regular of the show. It's great to have you back on. It's been a while since we caught up, talked golf courses. I wanted to do that, but I gotta say, I feel old right now. This is your 10th season on the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
And I just was thinking back. This is like a vivid early memory of the origins of what I do. It was Sunday night. It was the second PGA Tour event I ever wrote about. We started the Fried Egg newsletter in December of 2015. So it's Kapalua, and then the next Sunday, I've got work Monday morning. It's Central Time. I'm up working late on the Fried Egg, and I'm watching Zac Blair duke it out with Fabian Gomez at the Sony. And you hit that shot, and you said, "Oh, that's so good," right? Was that what you said? Was it a 3-wood on 18? I remember it I remember exactly where I was. I was at my friend's apartment, and I can't believe it was 10 years. It was 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy. I also remember where I was at that time.
Probably remember everything about that shot.
Yeah, I remember the putt for sure. Foot out, I was like, "Oh, that's money." Buried it. This is awesome. Let's go. But it was a fun week for sure.
What you're 10 on tour. What do you what do you think about going into a season? You've played a couple weeks, but what are the thoughts that how is it different than 2016?
Finishing 126 is different spot. Obviously, every week's kind of trying to figure out if you're going to get in and be an alternate or have to go. So especially the first couple months of the season, it's obviously a little different. But been out there a long time, kind of know most of the courses. Just excited to get some opportunities hopefully this year, and it's still fun though. Still golf, still the job. Just got to go play good for 4 rounds and. It's awesome. I mean, it's a pretty good gig.
Mr. 126, 2 times. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, tough scene.
Let's talk about golf courses. I gave you a little assignment. This is kind of a recurring segment, I guess, on this podcast. As recurring as anything is. Where we talk to people about golf courses they think about the most. So I asked you, what are the 3 golf courses that you find yourself thinking about the most? And let's start with number 1 or number 3, whichever one you want to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is definitely something that changes, based on what's going on and, trips coming up or where you're going to be. But I tried to take most of that out of it. Because, for example, when we were building the tree farm, I was going over to England and, I was thinking about all the Heathland golf courses for a really long time. So those definitely popped into my mind for, which courses do I think about the most? But I think for me, I've tried to maybe generalize it a little more of just like in the last 10 years, like, what are my favorites or what are my courses I'm thinking about the most? And I think the tree farm, obviously a clear number 1, just building it and, kind of being that part of it, kind of think about it every day for the last like 5 years plus. So that's the number 1. Am I going 1 through 3? Or are we talking about them, or what's the?
Well, let's talk about it. Let's unpack here. Number 1, I expected this. I expected Tree Farm to be number 1, and I think anybody that didn't expect it to be number 1, I think we would have to see why you expected something else to be number 1. But with Tree Farm, obviously, like, I think like the whole process of it is, as you said, 5 years. Effectively,
Plus,
like
yeah.
you bought the property for Tree Farm, like basically the week the world shut down during COVID. It was like the first week of COVID that you went down and purchased the property. So like you think about like you're looking for land before then. And now like this is, this fall you just finished the lodging at Tree Farm. So it's like finally a fully operational club.
Yep.
And we've talked over the years a lot about the construction of Tree Farm. What are you thinking about now with Tree Farm? Now that like all the big things are done.
Yeah. So long process, like you kind of mentioned. I think now that those big things are in place, the golf course has kind of, been around for a couple of years. For me, I kind of always saw the golf course for sure as, that there would be some tweaks and changes and, it would evolve over time. I felt like kind of the best golf courses in the world always, have that in common. Basically, they don't just roll it out and say, all right, we got it perfect. Let's just go with it forever. So, I'm always kind of constantly thinking about what are certain things that need to be tweaked or changed. And I know it's a fine line. You don't want to get caught up, like some other places that just are making changes to make changes. But I'm always looking at it like, how could this be better? Not just for how I'm playing the golf course, but, for how everybody else is playing it. So I think just kind of continuing to tweak certain things, continue to add stuff and work on the drainage or work on, anything. The whole team's kind of, always thinking about those sorts of things. And I think it'll kind of continue to evolve over the next, forever, I guess.
You've got a membership, you have people, and I think the one thing that's common with any membership is everybody's got takes, everybody's got opinions, everybody's got feedback. How do you like process the feedback? Like, what do you, because like I think everybody will tell you what they think about it. Like that, I think that's the thing that's fascinating about golf is like everybody's entitled to an opinion. Everybody's opinion has valid reasoning behind it. But like you're the one at the end of the day that's got to process and this feedback and like how do you kind of think about taking people's feedback?
For me, I'm always kind of maybe overreaching for feedback. I kind of ask everybody what they think. I typically honestly kind of look at the tee sheet each day and see who's out there and, reach out and see what the day was like and what they liked and disliked, and kind of looking for some constructive criticism. But I've really kind of taken most of the feedback the last handful of years, just because the course has been playable and open since, at least 2023. And, I feel like there's like common things that people, piggyback on and start having takes on. And, some of them are valid and some of them aren't. And again, I try to kind of evaluate which ones make sense and which ones I see maybe overlapping with what other people are kind of talking about, and maybe think of some strategies to make adjustments. But overall, I mean, the goal for the place was to be really fun, for everybody that went out and played, not just really good golfers. So again, it's kind of a fine line of hearing the stuff and figuring out if you should actually explore those things, because obviously not everyone's an expert, right? You could just have somebody that is pretty new to the golf architecture world, or just new to golf in general, that is like, this green is a little too extreme or too much, but you might have some other people that are like, oh, that's my favorite green out there. So it's always kind of a fine line.
I think the thing that I think about a lot too is like how much your opinion can change or thoughts change with repeated plays, different wins, different days, like different places that you end up. Like, I think like I had such a different opinion of Streamsong Black the second time I played it than the first time I played it. First time I played it, I played outstanding. I had the ball on the string. And the second time I played it, it was the complete opposite. I hit it just all over the place and found myself hitting like recovery shots left and right. And I thought like, wow, this is really fun, because like I'm having to really think about like these shots, versus the first time I didn't really think about anything, and I think like that's just generally an interesting thing. But like people are most apt, I would say, to give you feedback after their first time around.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, might not get the chance to play it more than once, that you might be hearing feedback from, or they might, only play it once a year, and it might take a really long time for them to get kind of that repeat look at the place. And that is kind of like one of the dangerous things about just opinions with golf, or there's tons of other things that kind of fall into that category, but like with golf for sure, I feel like you really need like several looks at a golf course before you can really, from different tees and seeing different pins, and like you mentioned, being on different spots of a golf hole can just completely change. You might hit the perfect shot, be in the perfect spot, and think like, oh, this is kind of a nothing hole. And then the next day you play it and you find yourself in the wrong spot, and you're like, oh, wow, it's super, advantageous to be over where I was yesterday to that spot, and I didn't even know that. So it is kind of one of the dangerous things. I've learned that over the last 10, 15 years, that it's hard to give like a very expert opinion about a place until you've really kind of, seen it in depth a few times.
Being an active solicitor of feedback, what's been the feedback that you have been kind of most proud of? Like when you think about it is a Herculean effort to build a golf course, just let alone a golf course, an entire golf facility. So what's been kind of like the piece of feedback that's kind of brought you the most joy and happiness with everything that you've gone through to build the golf course?
I think on the golf course side, it's just people having fun. Again, I mentioned that earlier. Like that was the entire goal. We didn't try and build a championship golf course that was going to host, professional events or anything like that. We just wanted a place where you could go out and make some birdies and have fun and, get some different looks and just be exciting kind of, for 4 hours, to go mess around and have fun. So that on the golf side, and then just
hold on though. You say like go out, like you got to hit some big time golf shots out there. Like, yeah, you can
Yeah,
make birdies,
yeah,
but like, I mean, you think about 4,
I think
you got to like stand up and you got to hit a shot. 8, you got to hit a damn good golf shot, twice. I think like that's a misconception. It is friendly, but it is by no means like, here you go. Here, I'm just handing you birdies.
I think, yeah, I think again, kind of just, beating this point up, but the goal was always like, hey, if I go play really good, execute and do the right things, I'm going to get some chances. And that's what it is out there, pretty friendly off the tee. It can play somewhat long if you play like the Tree Monster tees all the way back, but not everyone obviously goes back there. So it's not overly long from like the tees that most people play. A couple of the par fives are reachable if you hit some good shots. There's a couple shortish par fours, and you obviously got a couple of drivable par fours. So there's plenty of opportunities if you do the right stuff. But yes, there are a handful of kind of meaty golf holes. 3's really long, 4's really long, 8's really long, 12's really long, and 15 can be pretty long too, and it is probably one of the harder holes out there. So yeah, it's got that variance of where you're making a lot of birdies, but you can also make a lot of bogeys. I think just with the nature of being fairly generous off the tee and having so much short grass around the greens and not a lot of hazards in play, there's maybe not like a ton of doubles just in play unless you really screw something up either around the greens or off the tee. But again, that was kind of like contributing into the fun factor of, who wants to go get beat up, when they go play golf, especially on a golf course they might only see.
It's one of Alistair Mackenzie's principles, about a bad golf hole is one where you can lose your golf ball. It's hard to lose a golf ball out there.
Yeah, the natives starting to, get a little dicier in spots, but overall, yeah, like you hear a lot of groups kind of say, hey, it was really cool. We didn't lose a golf ball like for the entire group for the 2-day trip, which, it was meant to be like that.
I mean, I think back to like one of my least favorite rounds of golf of my lifetime. And this was when I was living in the city. I was playing with one of my best friends, which like should not be the barrier of least favorite rounds. But we were playing Harborside, which is a golf factory. It was a slow round. This is mid-20s. And my buddy at the time had like a little case of the driver yips. And literally we looked for golf balls like all day long.
Yeah, there's kind of nothing worse than that. I truly like go into the round and just say, hey, I don't expect you to look for mine. I'm not looking for yours. And just,
I've been
that's just that's a house rule, for casual golf.
It should, if there's nothing worse than when you're on like the right side of the fairway and you look over and it's like somebody that you don't know well is in like the left hay. And you're like, you know what? I got to walk over there and act like I'm going to look for this golf ball. Otherwise, this guy's going to think I'm an asshole.
Yeah, you got to get that out of the way on the first tee. You just, hey, you're on your own today. No offense, not trying to be rude, but, I don't expect your help. You're not going to get mine.
Take us behind the curtain here. I got to ask, most people don't get the opportunity to build a golf course of their own. I think everybody dreams of this. What's the most annoying thing about building a golf course of your own? And it could be wide range. It's something that falls in the bucket of looking for somebody else's golf ball in terms of annoyance.
I think on the operational side, it's like the weather, every day I'm just like, I feel so bad when the weather's bad for people going on a trip. You're like, shit, when it's yours and you're, again, I'm always kind of like reaching out to people, seeing, what their trip's like or, what they liked or disliked. So it's just brutal kind of like always watching the weather in New Holland and being like, oh man, it's like really shitty today. Then trying to like get ahead of it. Sorry, the weather, sucked today. Hopefully you guys still had fun. But, that's definitely one of them. And then just building it, just kind of like the costs associated with it, just kind of gets more and more expensive the bigger and better you're trying to build it. So would love to go back like 100 years and just have some really sick land to just kind of fall in your lap, and oh wow, my family owns 400 acres like on the ocean, like let's go build a golf course there.
Yeah, that would be nice. I think you got a great piece of land though, and that's I think one of the neat things about the place. Like most stunning is just the land and how it was able to be itself with how you built the golf course. Let's get to number 2. What's number 2 on your list?
You talked about it yesterday. I feel like you've got me. You've got me scoped out pretty good. I'm probably going to go Pine Valley. It's one of my favorite golf courses in the world. And like I kind of mentioned yesterday, I just feel like it's a bunch of unique looks throughout the round, really cool greens. And at least from the back tees, you feel so good about playing a good round of golf out there that it's kind of one that, for me, it has always kind of been, that bar of if you can get anywhere around that, like you're doing something right.
I think the thing that's interesting about Pine Valley is outside of maybe like a couple shots out there, no hole do you stand on and you are like, this is like nothing is like outwardly hard about it, like overwhelmingly hard outside of maybe a couple shots. But when you put together the entirety of it and the like, I think like if you think about golf, like there are golf shots that vary. If you associated a 10 stress level with shots to a 0 stress level, I feel like Pine Valley just like hovers at 6 for 18 holes, like between like 5 and 8. Like nothing is like overwhelming 10 out of this world hard shot, but there is also no shot that you can ever take your attention away from. And it's that kind of makes it such a difficult course, because once you're out of position, like big number is kind of what you said about Tree Farm, where like double, like it feels like once you're out of position there, you are like, okay, how do I make bogey sometimes?
Yeah, totally. I think, again, not as generous off the tee as the Tree Farm, but fairly generous, especially once you kind of, I think visually off the tee, there's a lot of shots where you're like, oh, this is a tough tee shot. Then you kind of get up there and you look around and look back and you're like, oh gosh, there's way more room up here than you think. But the differentiator, I guess, is like those shots into the green. If and when you do miss, you find yourself in like really challenging spots that aren't that kind of guaranteed. Oh, well, I'm going to get it on the green. You see a lot of really bad things happen out of the bunkers and, from misses. It's honestly kind of like the exact opposite of the Tree Farm around the greens, like not a lot of short grass, a lot of stuff like very rappelly, like balls bouncing into really, really bad spots and, not guaranteed you're going to get a good lie or anything like that. So, but I do agree, like maybe outside of the tee shot on 5, the par 3, there's not like a ton of, wow, I have to hit a perfect shot. Like there, you gotta hit a really, really good shot with a really long club. But other than that, greens are pretty big. Fairways are pretty big, but you just got to kind of execute and hopefully, you're at least able to get the ball in the short grass off the tee most of the day. Because if you don't, that's where you get into like some, really bad stuff.
The greens, I think, like, so my experience there this year was the first time playing it, and I took a red eye in, and I was playing like the next morning, and my clubs didn't make it. So, and it was blowing like 25.
Perfect.
and like, so I'm playing rental clubs, and it's really windy. And what I felt, I just didn't feel like I had very much control of the golf ball, and I hit it pretty well. But like what I saw was like, okay, I'm hitting greens, but I'm like never in the right spot. Like I didn't know exactly how far the ball was going to go, because I just like, you're, and once you lose that exact, like, I think like the thing about the lag putting out there is so hard. And if you get above flags, and this is the case, I think like, I don't want, this isn't meant to be like a shot at the PGA Tour, but I guess it is. But like when you get to the place where you have a lot of slope in greens and slope around cups, the precision and knowing where, like when you're playing, I'd never played it. I don't know where I want to miss shots. And the first time around, it just felt like even when I hit good shots, I'm getting up there and I'm like, oh, this is probably the worst spot I could be hitting this 18-foot putt from, And like the slope around the greens just makes it, the greens, like, I don't think like necessarily like everybody always talks about the greens there, but the greens as a whole are so good because they reinforce everything back.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of putting out there, and to your point, kind of a lot of tilt. A lot of them have that right amount of tilt where you got to kind of marry the line and the speed, and you got to be in the right spot to be able to be aggressive. And you'll get in certain holes or certain spots where, wow, I hit a really good shot, and you might be 12 feet just past it above the hole, and you're kind of like, all right, well, now I'm playing defense a little bit. So.
You're
you
either deciding like,
those.
Am I going to try and make this, or am I just going to try and cozy this up? And they're
totally.
completely different. Like, and it's such a hard spot to be in.
Yeah. To your point, you don't get a ton of those golf courses out on the PGA Tour. You're getting a lot more kind of like modern stuff with a lot more little internal stuff around the greens that they can get really, really fast. But you get a lot of putts that are inside the hole and, that sort of thing from close range where, the tournament's not there this week, but like, when it's at Riviera, you kind of see that a little more on display where you get a lot of little 5, 6, 7 footers that are like, not inside the hole, and it definitely makes golf a lot more difficult when that's the case.
I think that's what we all love about the major championships. I think I can't think of a great golf course that doesn't have a set of greens that like when you're 5, 6 feet away, you're like regularly outside the hole.
Yeah, greens are important.
Is there a particular hole that maybe at Pine Valley that maybe wasn't your favorite your first times around, but has grown into one of your favorites?
I think 14, the par 3 down the hill. They're always kind of messing around. They're always kind of messing around with stuff out there, and I do think they've tweaked kind of the back tees a little bit and lowered it a teeny bit. You get a windy day, your ball is just in the air so long from those back tees that it's just kind of like, I hope I get the right gust. I hope I hit it good, but not too good and go long. So that was one, maybe the first time I saw it. And this kind of goes back to the point about seeing a place one time. I probably left that day going like, like there's a lot of really good holes. Like I really don't like 14. I think it's too much. And then, seeing it a handful more times and different conditions. And like I said, they changed kind of some stuff here and there. I've kind of grown to be like, it's a pretty cool hole. And I've liked it a lot more since.
I had like the worst first experience at 14 you could have. I absolutely flushed an iron. And I was like, oh, that might go in. and then just curse splash, just right in the drink. And I'm like, what just happened? Next time played it, over the top, just dumped it into the left bunker, made sure it wasn't short. I think I made double both ways.
Yeah. That again, that's kind of, the ball's just in the air so long on that hole. You get a tough wind, and it's just, you're kind of like, I hope it kind of is going through the wind, but not too much, So yeah, it's a hard shot.
Yeah, it's one that it gets you thinking. It's honestly like a hole. It's like a perfect example of a hole that is. The more your golf brain works, the harder the hole is, because like no matter what, in the back of your head, because you can't really feel the wind. It's kind of got like a little 12 at Augusta, where like you can't really feel the wind, and you're just like, you can never get yourself fully 100% committed to hit the shot, because you're thinking like, is this really what's happening up there?
Yeah, you're just really kind of trusting what you've felt. Maybe you're changing directions on that course so much too, so it's not like you have this, well, for the last, 5 holes, it's been this way. So let's make sure, we trust that. So it's hard. I think overall though, the course is just, you get so many unique looks. I don't think there's a ton of shots you get up to and you're like, oh, wow, this reminds me a lot of this hole here, or let alone like this hole anywhere else. It's a lot of unique looks inside of the golf course. And then I think if it's obviously got the big scale, cool land. And if you sat there and talked to 10 people after your round, they all might have different holes they think are the best hole out there. And anytime you get that sort of range where it's like, a lot of places you go and they're like, oh, this is the best hole, this is my favorite hole. There, you could honestly just sit there and talk with everyone the whole day about what they think is the best and why. And I've just always really enjoyed it. And we kind of touched on it yesterday a little bit, but it also seems like it could continue to get better the more they kind of want to lean maybe out of the Fazio stuff and back into the older stuff that you see pictures of and everything like that. And we'll see what happens over time, I guess. It's always the number one course in America though, right?
Yeah. I think it's like number one course in America is such a, like, it's like, in what regard, right? Like the place, I always say this is like the place, I don't think like I could ever be happier than when I'm walking around Cypress Point on a golf course.
Yeah.
Like it's something about like the whole, the walk around it, like how it feels like a hike, because you get up into the cypress trees on or you get up into like the sand dunes on 5 and 6, and you're in that forest, and then you come out, and I just like, I think like I don't think I could get like, I could shoot 100 and not be frustrated about being there, whereas like at Pine Valley, like I could see myself getting very frustrated and not being as happy. But like, what is it the number one course of what? The number one course from a pure golf architecture standpoint, and what's in the ground? What is the ground? Like, this is the hard thing with rating courses, right?
Yeah. I think it's all pretty subjective, obviously, but it's got a lot of good everything outside of an ocean, right? I mean, it's got good land, some really cool architecture. It's got really cool greens, and it does it, like you said, not turned up to a 10 on every single shot, but like you're never going below like a 5 or a 6, right? You're kind of always in that like, oh, this is really cool. Oh, this is really cool. This is really cool. And obviously you get a little more of that eye candy out there. And you definitely have some kind of like wow looks. When you go to 2 or you go to 5 or 6, anything like that, you kind of get that throughout the golf course, throughout the entire round. So I just think it has so much like better than average stuff the whole time that it kind of adds up to being pretty awesome.
Some of whole parts, right? And it's got like super dramatic moments. I think that's the thing, that it's got like it just keeps your attention throughout. All right. What's number 3?
You kind of touched on it, Cypress. I think I went back and forth between like that and National. And I think just the setting of how dramatic it is and different spots of the course, kind of like you talked about, that it was just kind of like, man, if you had one last round anywhere, I'm probably seeing if I can get a tee time out there, go get it on a good day.
That's the thing, is it's just, there's a line that James Duncan used in a video that he like narrated about North Berwick for us. And he's like, I don't know if it's the best or it's the good. It just is. And like, I think about that a lot when I'm out there, is like I have like the hardest time separating, like, is this the greatest golf course? Like, it's actually kind of like the course, like, and the architecture is outstanding, but is the golf course for me that like the architecture means like the least, because of just the natural setting. And like Pebble down the road, like, don't get me wrong, like Pebble is outstanding setting, but it's kind of like the same the whole time. And to me, like the diversity of the natural areas that you play along, whether it's like, whether you're back in the forest on 4, 5, and 6, or whether you're up in the high dunes on 8 and 9, or you're right on the ocean, it is just like, I just would walk around. I feel there like
the way you go in and out of them too is kind of like bumps it up a little bit too. It's not like, hey, we're going, here. You see something, you go into something, you get out of it, you go back in, and then obviously you kind of at one point get to like the most dramatic place anywhere, in like that 15, 16 spot where you're just like, how could it get any better than this, to just be out here. Maybe, I don't know if 15 is a great hole. I don't know if 16 is a great hole, but the setting of them and, how much fun and how much variety you get with the winds and what's going on, one's short, one's long. It's just like that, like 30-minute stretch. You're just kind of like, you can't help but just be like, this is incredible. Like, this is pretty awesome.
I think you made a great point there about how you get in and out of them, out of the sections. The other aspect of that is you're never in one section for very long.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, like that dipping in and out of those kind of like different envelopes of the land, and how kind of like they all blend together and go together, but feel very different. When you get into 4 and get into, that spot, like deep into kind of like the dense woods, and then fall down out of them, but then kind of like get introduced into like the sandy dunes, and you're there for a sec, and then you pop back into the woods. It's pretty crazy. I think that's like, I think a very unique property in itself, and just like to route it that way, to not just be like, oh, we're gonna like, go get into the dunes and then like spend 9 holes on the ocean or whatever. Because that's your point. At Pebble, you're kind of just always on the cliff. Incredible, right? You could be out on those holes and just be like, man, how does it get better than 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10? But it, generally plus or minus is kind of like the same thing. Big ocean, big cliffs, great, but you're never like in and out and ups and downs as much as you are at Cypress.
That's the longer you spend time in one place. And I think this might be the less, like, it's a diminishing value, right? The more normal it gets. And maybe that's the magic of Cypress's kind of routing and how abbreviated the time periods are in different segments, and how there are these like transition areas. Like I'm thinking about like kind of like hole 6 that plays up out of the forest down into the dunes. Like they're like kind of like these blends, and then 10 kind of plays in between. Like you never are in a defined setting for really more than 3 holes there.
And they're big, like big swings. You know what I mean? Like you go way down the hill on 6, and you go way up the hill on 10, and you got like, you get the dog leg right into the dunes on 8, and then kind of like down the hill on 9. And 14, you're kind of going up the hill. It's just, I think they're like big swings, where Pebble or those other places, you're kind of, again, kind of plus or minus like same-ish elevations, within like 10 or 20 feet, where at Cypress, they're like huge swings.
I think, in a course that is similar to Pine Valley, right? There's a lot of variety in the forms, and there's a lot of big stuff.
Yeah. The scale's right. It's pretty dialed.
All right. Last question here before we get you out of here. What's the course or courses or that you're most want to see in 25?
I mean, I would love to get down to Tahiti and, play some golf in New Zealand. Haven't been down there, and it feels like a pretty special spot from, the stuff that I've seen and heard.
Let's do it.
I think
I had to just turn down. I had to turn down an invite there the other day. It killed me. It honestly gutted my soul. Yeah,
I think it's just so far away. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like, you've got kids. It's hard to say, hey, I'm just gonna like pop down there on a trip without. At least you could maybe like tie it to work and say, hey, I'm gonna go, do some profile on this course, and I really need to see it. Where it's not like there's a golf tournament necessarily down there that I'm looking to go tack it on. But I think definitely want to see that at some point. And then stateside, I think Prairie Dunes is one that I've kind of just never been able to get out there, and Ballyneal is probably another one that just haven't made it work. It's only one state over. Can't believe I've never been there, but every time I've seemingly tried to loop it into a trip or something, it's kind of fallen through. So
these are they're both not like next door. Like they both take a little bit of effort. Both of those. Totally. Yeah, it's. I think my issue with Tahiti at this point is if I bring up New Zealand, my wife's kind of like, yeah, when are we going?
Yeah, maybe we should just take the whole squads down. We'll spend a few weeks.
Then I start to add up the numbers on the cost, and I'm like, I don't know if this is the year.
I don't think we can go. I don't
know if this is a we trip here.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to go play like the Oz Open and kind of do that and just pop over after and just make it a little more, okay, I'm down in Australia for a couple weeks golfing and then hit it on the way home, or so, just something that makes it a little more, I mean, I think you can spend, weeks in New Zealand, right? I mean, there's good golf, there's a ton of good golf there that you can go see. So we got to figure out. We had kicked
around Christmas, just doing the whole Christmas there. We were very close to pulling the trigger, and we did not. It was sad when I had some things come up, and it just was like the wrong time. But we were like this close to doing it, and it was very sad that we didn't.
Yeah, it looks cool. I've just heard so much good stuff about it. Obviously, Kai was was down there, shaping a lot of it, and I worked with him for a couple of years on the tree farm. And, it was kind of always one of those things that it always kind of gets brought up with, oh, well, we did this down there, and I thought this was really cool how this turned out down there. And, seems like a good spot to check out.
I just looked, 2025 Australian Open is expected to remain on the Melbourne Sandbelt. So, has not been announced yet, but, that's seems like a good time.
Yeah. I did that, my first year on tour. So maybe it's a 10-year thing.
It's a 10-year. That's how you pitch it on the home front. It's a 10-year anniversary. All right, Zach, I appreciate the time. Everybody can follow you on Instagram, lively Instagram account. And thanks for chatting golf courses with us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys for having me.
All right. Big thanks to Zac Blair for joining. Also, big thanks to PJ Clark for editing and producing this podcast. We will be back next week with another episode. And thank you guys for listening.